There's someone watching this video right now who thinks they know you. They think you're a good person, moral, decent, someone who stands for the right things and fights against the wrong ones. They believe you're fundamentally different from those people you can't stand, the selfish ones, the manipulative ones, the weak ones. That someone is you. And you're wrong about yourself in ways that would shatter everything you believe about who you are. Right now, as you watch this, there's another version of you, a version that wants exactly what you despise, a version that feels exactly what you judge, a version that is exactly what you hate. This other you isn't hiding in some distant future or alternate reality. It's here, now, in this moment. Making decisions you think you're making, influencing choices you think are conscious, living a secret life inside your own mind. Carl Jung discovered this other you over a century ago. He called it the shadow, and what he found about the shadow will make you question every person you've ever hated, every moral stand you've ever taken, and every relationship you've ever had. Because Jung proved something that will disturb you to your core. You are psychologically attracted to exactly what you think you hate. Your mind is not what you think it is. What you call yourself, your personality, your values, your reactions, is just the visible tip of a massive psychological iceberg. Below your conscious awareness lies an entire underground world of repressed traits, forbidden impulses, and denied aspects of your nature. Jung wasn't interested in what people said about themselves. He was interested in what their behavior revealed about who they really were, and what he discovered in the depths of the human psyche changed everything we thought we knew about personality. Every trait you consciously reject about yourself doesn't disappear. It goes underground. It becomes your shadow, a hidden psychological double that contains everything your conscious mind finds unacceptable. But here's what Jung discovered that nobody wants to hear. The shadow doesn't just exist quietly in your unconscious. It actively shapes your life through the people you're drawn to criticize, the enemies you choose to fight, and the moral causes that make your blood boil. Think about someone who makes you irrationally angry, someone whose behavior triggers something visceral in you. Hold that feeling for a moment. That rage you feel? Jung realized it's not moral indignation, it's recognition. Your shadow recognizing itself in another person and screaming at you to look away before you see something you can't unsee about yourself. The people who trigger you most aren't random. They're not accidents. They're psychological mirrors reflecting your most deeply buried aspects back at you. And the stronger your reaction, the more precisely they're showing you what you've hidden from yourself. Jung discovered that your shadow isn't just one thing, it has faces, 3 specific faces that show up in every human psyche, controlling your reactions from the depths of your unconscious mind. And here's how you identify which face is controlling you. Look at what you hate most in other people. The predator lives in people who can't stand users. You know this rage. The fury you feel when you see people taking advantage of others, manipulators, people who use kindness as weakness, people who exploit generosity. If this makes your blood boil, if you pride yourself on being generous and selfless, if you give and give and give, Jung has news for you. You are the predator. You've just found a socially acceptable way to feed. Your giving comes with invisible strings. Your help comes with hidden prices. You take gratitude, you take loyalty, you take the psychological satisfaction of being needed and morally superior. You're predatory, but you've disguised it as virtue. The psychological tell. You become furious when your generosity isn't appreciated the way you think it should be, because you weren't actually giving. You were taking the feeling of being a good person. The victim lives in people who despise weakness. You know this contempt, the disgust you feel when you see people making excuses, playing victim, wallowing in self-pity, people who use their suffering to control others. If this triggers you, if you pride yourself on strength and independence, if you never complain and always handle everything alone, Jung has news for you. You are the victim. You've just weaponized your strength. Your independence is manipulation. Your silence about your struggles is emotional blackmail. You make others feel guilty by comparison. Look how much I handle while you can't even. You control through martyrdom. The psychological tell. You get energized by other people's failures and crises because they prove how strong you are in comparison. Every problem becomes evidence of your superiority. The destroyer lives in people who fight toxic behavior. You know this righteous fury. The satisfaction you feel exposing hypocrisy, correcting ignorance, fighting against harmful people. You're making the world better by eliminating what's wrong with it. If this energizes you, if you pride yourself on standing up to bullies and calling out bad behavior, if you spend significant time and energy fighting against people you consider harmful, Jung has news for you. You are the destroyer. You just found noble targets. You don't actually want to solve problems. You want to tear things down. The destruction is the point, not the improvement. You get sadistic pleasure from the act of attacking, even when it helps no one. The psychological tell. You're never satisfied when problems are actually resolved. You immediately find new enemies because the fight itself, not justice, is what feeds you. Which face did you recognize? Which description made you uncomfortable? Because that discomfort is your shadow trying to stay hidden. Now comes Jung's most disturbing discovery. You're not just unconsciously expressing your shadow traits while thinking you're fighting them. You're psychologically attracted to people who openly display your repressed shadow qualities. This isn't conscious attraction. It's unconscious magnetic pull toward people who will live out your forbidden traits for you. The person who prides themselves on being responsible falls for someone irresponsible. The people pleaser is drawn to someone selfish. The highly organized person can't resist someone chaotic. The person who never shows weakness is attracted to someone needy. You tell yourself you're trying to help them, fix them, or that they have potential. But Jung realized what's really happening. You need them to express your shadow so you can experience those forbidden parts of yourself without admitting you possess them. This is why you stay in relationships that frustrate you, why you're drawn to people whose behavior drives you crazy, why you complain about your partner's traits but can't seem to choose someone different. Your partner isn't randomly difficult. They're psychologically selected to carry your shadow. Every fight you have with them is actually an internal conflict between your conscious personality and your repressed traits, played out through another person. When they act selfish, your repressed selfishness gets to live. When they're emotional, your repressed emotions get expression. When they're irresponsible, your repressed desire for freedom gets to breathe. But because you can't admit you chose them for these qualities, you attack them for expressing exactly what you unconsciously need them to express. This is Jung's projection prison. You become addicted to criticizing others for traits you can't acknowledge in yourself. Every argument, every judgment, every moment of moral superiority feeds your shadow while keeping it unconscious. The criticism becomes compulsive because it's the only way your psyche allows you to engage with forbidden parts of yourself. You get to think about selfishness, manipulativeness, or weakness constantly, but always in other people, never in yourself. Every person you've ever intensely disliked has been showing you something about yourself that you refuse to see. That coworker whose arrogance makes you sick, look closer. How do you act when you know you're right? How do you treat people who disagree with you? How do you behave when you have expertise others lack? That family member whose neediness drives you crazy. Look deeper. How do you get attention when you need it? How do you make others feel responsible for your emotional state? What subtle ways do you make your needs other people's problems? Jung realized that our strongest moral reactions are never really about protecting the world from evil. They're about protecting ourselves from seeing our own capacity for what we condemn. This is why moral outrage feels so energizing. It's not righteous anger. It's psychological relief. relief that you found someone else to carry the traits you can't bear to acknowledge in yourself. Every toxic person you identify, every narcissist you diagnose, every manipulator you expose, they're all psychological escape routes from facing your own complexity. But Jung discovered something that will change how you see every relationship in your life. The people you judge most harshly are often the people most similar to you psychologically. You recognize something in them because it exists in you. The recognition triggers panic, so your mind creates psychological distance through moral judgment. I'm nothing like them. I'm good, they're bad. I help, they hurt. I'm strong, they're weak. But Jung proved these distinctions are usually illusions. Shadow projection creates artificial differences between people who are fundamentally similar. The intensity of your reaction is directly proportional to how precisely they're reflecting your disowned traits back at you. Jung's discovery about individual shadows was disturbing enough, but then he realized something that explained the darkest chapters of human history. Entire societies have collective shadows. Just as individuals repress unacceptable traits, cultures repress collective qualities that don't fit their group identity. Then they project these shadow qualities onto other groups, creating enemies out of psychological mirrors. Every genocide begins with shadow projection. Every war starts with a group convincing itself that another group embodies everything they've repressed about their own nature. The most brutal oppressors believe they're fighting evil. The most violent crusaders think they're protecting goodness. The most destructive movements convince themselves they're creating paradise. Jung lived through both world wars. He watched ordinary moral people become capable of extraordinary cruelty when they believed they were fighting their projected collective shadow. Germans weren't uniquely evil. Americans who committed atrocities weren't born monsters. They were normal people who got caught in collective shadow projection and expressed their repressed traits through fighting those same traits in others. This is happening right now. Every political movement that demonizes the other side, every cultural group that defines itself against another group, every social cause that requires having enemies to fight. The people you politically oppose aren't your opposites. They're your psychological siblings expressing different aspects of the same human nature you share. The traits you condemn in them exist in you. The fears you project onto them live in your own psyche. Jung realized that collective shadow projection was one of the most dangerous forces in human history, but he also discovered the antidote: individual shadow integration. When enough individuals become conscious of their own capacity for what they condemn in others, societies become less susceptible to mass projection and scapegoating. Jung discovered that there's only one way to escape the shadow's control: stop fighting it and start acknowledging it. Integration doesn't mean acting on every dark impulse. It means bringing your repressed traits into conscious awareness so they stop controlling you from the underground. When you admit you have selfish impulses, you can choose genuine generosity instead of unconscious manipulation. When you acknowledge your capacity for cruelty, you can choose authentic kindness instead of moral superiority. When you accept your weaknesses, you can develop real strength instead of defensive armor. But integration requires something that feels psychologically impossible: admitting that your moral identity has been partially built on projection and denial. It means acknowledging that some of your strongest convictions have been defense mechanisms, that some of your most righteous anger has been psychological misdirection, that some of your deepest certainties about other people have been confessions about yourself. Jung called this the integration terror, the fear of discovering you're more complex, more contradictory, and more morally ambiguous than you wanted to believe. Most people would rather stay in the projection prison than face this terror, because integration means admitting that the people you've spent years condemning might have been showing you rejected parts of yourself. But Jung also discovered something extraordinary. People who successfully integrate their shadow become psychologically stronger, more authentic, and paradoxically more moral than those trapped in projection. Because when you stop unconsciously expressing your repressed traits through projection and criticism, you gain the power to make genuinely conscious choices about who you want to be. So here you are, still looking in that mirror, but everything has changed. The person looking back isn't the simple moral character you thought you were seeing. It's someone far more complex, someone capable of both extraordinary kindness and subtle cruelty, both genuine generosity and unconscious manipulation, both authentic strength and hidden weakness, someone who has spent years unconsciously drawn to people who express their forbidden traits, someone who has built parts of their identity around fighting aspects of themselves they projected onto others. This complexity isn't a flaw in your psychology. Jung realized it's the foundation of genuine psychological strength. Because the shadow you acknowledge becomes your ally. The shadow you deny becomes your master. Every person you've intensely disliked has been a teacher trying to show you something about yourself you weren't ready to learn. Every enemy has been a mirror reflecting your disowned nature back at you. Jung's ultimate discovery was that the goal of psychological development isn't to become perfect, it's to become complete. Not to eliminate your shadow, but to integrate it. Not to stop having dark impulses, but to become conscious of them so you can choose what to do with them. The next time someone triggers intense irritation in you, try Jung's revolutionary question. What is this person showing me about myself that I don't want to see? The answer will disturb you. But Jung proved that voluntary disturbance is always better than unconscious control, because the shadow you refuse to see controls you from the underground. But the shadow you consciously acknowledge becomes your guide to becoming who you genuinely choose to be. Welcome to your complete self. Jung knew you'd get here eventually. And that someone who was watching this video at the beginning thinking they knew you, they're gone now. Because you can never unknow what you've just discovered about yourself.